By 2050, Africa's population will reach 2.5 billion, making it the largest workforce on the planet. 1 in every 4 people in the world will be African, and it's not just rising in numbers, but rather in power. Africa is not only home to the fastest growing economies, but it also controls the most valuable resources on Earth. This continent is sitting on a gold mine, not just of gold and oil, but of the strategic minerals that fuel modern technology. Lithium, cobalt, rare earth elements. These are not just raw materials, they are the foundation of the AI revolution, electric cars, and military defense systems. Without them, the global economy as we know it would grind to a halt, and for decades, the West has controlled these resources, extracting them cheaply while keeping Africa weak and dependent. But now, that's changing. Fast. China is investing billions into African infrastructure, securing direct trade and mining agreements that bypass Western corporations. Russia is expanding its military influence, making strategic alliances with African nations that are now rejecting Western control. And most importantly, African nations themselves are starting to push back. Governments are taking control of their industries, cutting out foreign middlemen, and demanding higher profits from their own natural wealth. This shift isn't just about economics, it's a global power struggle. The West isn't just watching Africa rise, it's afraid of what that means. Because if Africa truly takes control of its resources, the entire balance of global power will shift. For decades, Africa's vast wealth was controlled by Western corporations and multinational banks. These companies came in, extracted resources, and left behind very little for the African people. Rich in oil, gas, minerals, and agricultural land, Africa should have been one of the wealthiest continents on Earth. Instead, it was trapped in a system where most of the profits left the continent, and what remained was a cycle of debt, instability, and foreign dependency. But today, African leaders are waking up to this reality. More and more, governments are renegotiating contracts, demanding better trade deals, and in some cases, nationalizing industries to ensure that African wealth stays in Africa. And this is exactly what the West does not want. At the same time, China and Russia have entered the game, offering Africa an alternative to Western control. China, in particular, has taken a completely different approach to Africa than the US or Europe. Instead of treating Africa as a charity case, China sees it as a business partner. Over the last 2 decades, China has poured over $200 billion into Africa, building highways, railways, ports, and energy infrastructure. Chinese companies are striking direct deals with African nations, cutting out Western corporations that have historically monopolized Africa's natural wealth. And these deals, on the other hand, has taken a different but equally effective strategy. Instead of focusing on economic investments, Russia is forging military alliances. The Wagner access to Africa's resources. The more military influence Russia gains, the less control the West has. And this is why we are seeing rising tensions between the West and African nations that are breaking away from Western influence. Just look at what happened when Mali and Burkina Faso expelled French and US military forces from their countries. Almost immediately, Western media began calling these governments unstable and dangerous. But is that really the case? Or is the West simply panicking because its grip on Africa is slipping away? The truth is, the US and Europe are losing influence in Africa. They don't know how to stop it. For decades, Western powers controlled Africa through debt, corporate monopolies, and political pressure. But today, African nations are choosing their own path. Many are rejecting Western loans in favor of China's infrastructure investment. Others are cutting off Western corporations and taking full control of their own resources. And more, African nations are aligning with new economic alliances like BRICS, which aims to create a global financial system outside of Western control. If Africa continues on this path, the consequences will be massive. The West's entire economic system is built on access to cheap African resources. If that supply disappears or becomes more expensive, Western economies could face major crises. Prices of electronics, batteries, and even food could skyrocket if Africa decides to charge what its resources are really worth. This is why the US and Europe are racing to regain control, but their influence is fading fast. Meanwhile, Africa is preparing for a new future. By 2050, not only will it have the largest workforce in the world, but it will also have some of the fastest growing economies. The African Continental Free Trade Agreement, AFCFTA, is already in motion, creating the largest free trade zone on the planet, allowing African countries to trade with each other instead of relying on Europe or the US. Tech hubs are rising in places like Kenya, Nigeria, and South Africa, meaning Africa is not just exporting raw materials anymore. It's developing its own high-tech industries. For the first time, Africa is shaping its own economic destiny, and the rest of the world is watching in fear. The big question is, will Africa succeed in fully taking control of its future, or will the West find a way to regain its hold over the continent? One thing is certain, the world is changing fast. If Africa continues this path, it could become one of the most powerful economic regions on the planet. The only question left is, who will try to stop it? So what do you think? Will